So we're here to talk about the B2B survival guide for UX designers. And I'd really love to introduce our designer. So Netta is, as I mentioned, a UX designer at Eco Online, where she creates SaaS solutions for companies to help them stay safe and reduce their environmental impact. She also tries to help non-designers and designers brush up on their UX design skills by mentoring them and sharing UX content on her Instagram page, UX Netta, and LinkedIn. If you haven't checked it out, you definitely should. She has some really wonderful content on there. Aneta is also dear to us as an alumni from one of our courses, and we really are so pleased to have her here today. And so I'm gonna switch it, hand it over to her, and I'm gonna get off stage.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm super pleased to be here and to be able to speak to your community, guys. I was a part of your UX strategy course and I really missed it. I might join maybe another one. So yeah, it was really great. And I'm happy to share today with you my insights and my experience in B2B. So this talk will cover some tips, tricks, and magic about B2B survival guide for UX designers. But before this, of course, let me introduce myself quickly. My name is Aneta, as Hannah already told you. I'm Polish, so my surname is a bit tricky to pronounce. It's Kmiecik. I don't live in Poland. I've been living in Oslo for 3 years right now. I am an ex-architect and graphic designer. I studied architecture and graphic design, and I worked as an architect for many years. But since almost 5 years, I've been already a UX designer, and currently I work in B2B products in health, safety, and environment industry, as Hannah mentioned. But apparently I'm changing my job in 2 weeks, so it will change. And yeah, I do content creation. So if you haven't reached out to me on LinkedIn or Instagram, just, don't hesitate. I'm always happy to chat with people online. And I am also a UX mentor. But this talk is not about me, so let's get straight into the topic. I would like to talk today about my experience in B2B, in particular about the corporate environment. So I want to talk about startups and products that you build from scratch. We'll be talking corporate language, and I will share with you my challenges that I encountered designing B2B products, designing in B2B environments, working in corporate B2B organizations. And of course, if you feel those challenges, and I can see from the survey that Hannah did already, that you feel the challenges. So let's not panic, because there will be some tricks and tips for me for surviving this environment. So let's start with the very basic knowledge about B2B corporate organization. And you probably know all of this, but let's make it more clear maybe. So what actually employees are doing in B2B organization? We of course drink coffee. That's probably something that happens everywhere, but we are also discussing a lot of stuff. We're discussing and meeting, and we are discussing and sharing opinions. We are migrating users from legacy products to new products until those new products are no longer so new. And we need to migrate those users to a newer product. We, of course, are checking competitors if we can, because in B2B, this is very tricky. But this is something that we also do. We try to customize our products for our users, for our buyers organization, because very often businesses require some specific things in their products. We're, of course, rewriting code, actually not me, but my colleagues, developers, because most products in B2B organization, corporate organization, were probably created some years ago, and they were probably based on an old tech stack. So now it's high time to rewrite the code so that we designers, ultimately, we might be able to implement our designs. So because of all those changes and discussions, we're of course playing politics. That's something that we can't forget about. We're of course also changing roadmaps, and we're waiting until the code will be done, until the users will be migrated, until we get to know competitors, and until the politics will ultimately help us with these challenges. But what actually does a UX designer do? So I made this small effort and I Googled this. And of course, this is not a definition strictly for B2B organization, but basically for a UX designer, I basically put this question in Google. And the first definition is that we make products, services, and technology usable, enjoyable, accessible for humans. Of course, I guess we might all agree, but of course, sometimes happen that we might really wait for an implementation. So our users will not see the usable, enjoyable, and accessible products for humans. And this is a real screenshot from my conversations from one of my projects. The second definition is about gathering information and insights about target users. I am sure we all agree here as well. But sometimes, and I saw it already in the survey, that sometimes we basically struggle with getting those responses, and we might get just 6 responses for the survey. So gathering information and insight about our target users, not so easy. But we all probably can agree that we are hired to solve users' problems. But so are product managers and other people in an organization. And meanwhile, our sales colleagues, they are selling the dreams. And why I have highlighted the dreams? Because here I have highlighted that we are waiting for implementation before September, a couple more before. So meanwhile, when we are all waiting for the implementation, our colleagues sales team, they need to sell them. So they sell the future state. So this is the dream. But what about this business to business? How does it work? And basically what's going on there? So in a nutshell, this relationship is based on 2 businesses. So there is the product organization business in which we work as UX designers, and the buyers organization business, where are our users? And basically the transaction, the relationship is pretty simple. We build a product, hopefully usable, enjoyable, accessible, and all of this, and they pay us money for this product. So basically, we do it to run our business, and they use our product to run their business more efficiently as well. And in all this setup, there are different players, I call them. So we have our colleagues, salespeople, and those people deal with buyers. And in B2B, basically buyers are usually not the same people as users, whereas we deal with users. And all of that here, we have different goals. So first of all, salespeople, they of course want to sell the products for lots of money, get bonuses and all of this. Whereas buyers, they want to get the most customizable, relevant product for usually less money. While we as UX designers, we of course want to solve users' problem, and our users, they just basically want to get their tasks done quickly. And in between us, this one connection that connects us all is the product. But of course, it's not only us here. There are a lot of other people. And on our part, we have a lot of various stakeholders. This can be people who are also dealing with direct contact with users or buyers. It can be an implementation team, I don't know, product team. It can be a training team, many other people. But also our buyers organization, they also deal with stakeholders. So there's business, and some problems might be similar if we have similar size of organization, for instance. But ultimately, it's of course worth remembering that this is a pure transactional agreement and that everything needs to look good in Excel. Not only in our business, but also in our buyers organization business. So where our users sit. They also calculate how much money they will spend on a product. And of course, we can imagine that those decision-making process on buying our product also takes time. So what about the challenges for us as designers? As you probably already know, the first one is that we deal with multiple stakeholders. This can be users, friends, boss, design colleagues, hundreds of managers, obviously in corporate, because everyone needs to be a manager, expert buyers, and more. So imagine that you need to get your designs to those people on this image here in Tokyo on Shibuya Street, and you need to get an approval on you, or you need to get feedback on your designs. If there's so many people there, the processes will be just slower, and the decision-making processes also will be slower, and you will spend a lot of time on meetings. And it might happen that you will work in silo. But about this in a sec. The second challenge that is directly related to us as designers are obviously users at work. So remind yourself, how was it at work today for you? Did you have a lot of time? Did you have time for maybe hopping on a research call with a UX researcher from, I don't know, Miro team or other tools that you use at work? I can guess that probably you didn't have this time. And we can say the same thing about our users, because these are people at work. So those people are busy. Of course, because there are people at work, they might have different roles. So do we, right? There are UX designers, UX designers, design leads, and so on. So they have different user roles. They might have different responsibilities, tasks, and they might work in different industries. So I work right now in the health, safety, and environment industry. But B2B can happen in financial, HR, CRM, and many, many other places, right? So what does it mean for us as designers? First of all, of course, we already know it that there are limited access to users usually. However, from my experience, many times where we deal with superpower users, so those users like managers, and they imagine that those clients have already bought our product or they have been already using those products, they might be more eager to join the research interviews with us just because they have already invested in this product. And if they would like to change this would require another long process for approving budget, all of those people from business and so on. So it's just not worth it. Of course, those businesses often require some customization, especially enterprise big fishes that pay us a lot of money. Because those people are at work, like this guy here on the construction site, they might have quite complex workflows. And this might lead to a data-heavy interface that we as designers must deal with. Of course, these are not only challenges. My favorite challenge connected to B2B corporate organization is, of course, the fact that organizations are living organisms. So imagine that you work in an organization and your organization is on the way for the meeting. You're on a boat with your organization and basically you're sailing through the ocean. You collaborate with your stakeholders, with your colleagues, and you know what you're doing on a boat. Everyone knows their roles. There is a skipper, like a CEO of the boat, and basically you're sailing through the ocean. Everything is smooth. This is a moment when I call that the UX designer is a samurai. So I don't know if you're familiar who were samurais. Samurais were soldiers back in the time in the Japanese military, and they had the high prestige. They had also, of course, lots of money. They also, of course, had also separate house, a beautiful katana, so the clothes. And basically they were well known. And this is what can happen when your organization is basically on this way, where everything is smooth and the stakeholders respect UX, the processes are defined, you can focus on the craft. However, sometimes your organization might go so smoothly on the ocean, they might maybe miss a skipper, or maybe basically no one has experience with sailing, right? Then there's a bit of a challenge. And usually the team on this boat don't know how to work with each other. They don't know how to, how to use the boat and how to move forward on the ocean. And that's the moment when probably no one knows each other, and particularly us as designers. You might be a design team of one, hopefully design team of two, three, maybe five. And if you are the first designer hired, or maybe designers new because you don't know, no one knows how to collaborate with you, you might not be included so often in all projects and processes. And in this particular case, there might be a lot of challenges for this organization stage. However, if you should solve it, that's another question. And the last one, working in silo. So imagine that you are a design team of one, or maybe a design team of two, and you work and live on this one island here. Your stakeholders are on another island, and users are on the third island, and there are no bridges in between. This is a moment where basically organization works in a silo. And in this stage, UX usually is forgotten. And there are obviously some communication problems because imagine, you live in one island and another people are living on another island. So you basically, there is no communication. And to add to this, there might be some issues with the languages and with communication and with understanding. This is an image with a list of various Norwegian dialects. Norwegian is the language that I'm learning right now, preparing for my new job. So sometimes it might happen that you as a UX designer and your stakeholders, you might all speak different UX dialects. So you are a UX designer and you say, for instance, improve UX. Yes, let's improve UX. Let's solve users' problems. And let's say that your stakeholder is saying the same, but they might mean a different thing. Or maybe they say something different, like improve design. And you might think that you are talking about the same thing, but you don't. The stakeholder might think that UX means visual design, that UX means design system, that UX means UI design, components, journeys, and PS score. There can be many different variations depending on the stakeholder. So how we should survive in this environment? There are so many challenges, right? Multiple stakeholders, users at work, working in silo, organization as a living organism. So one day can be awesome, another day it can be really bad. And maybe design team of one. Well, first of all, my first tip that I would like to give you based on my experience is basically to treat this environment as a UX project in a sense. So start from learning about businesses and people. And I'm not talking about just your product organization business, but in B2B context, we should learn about the industry, about businesses that we design for as well, because these are specific environments. Of course, we need to understand the roles, the people that we work with. We need to understand what they mean when they say, let's improve UX. Very crucial. And of course, build relationship. Ultimately, it's all about the board and the collaboration. And we need to know who plays which role on the board. So if there is a skipper, those are the CEO of the board, where are other designers, developers, and all of this? We need to know who does what. And we need to know what are the problems. We need to know what are the needs so that we can pick the right problems to solve. The second tip that I have for you might look a bit strange because the tip is that we might need to act as a coach and as a facilitator. So you might say right now, I haven't signed up for this, right? I wanted to design. I wanted to create user experience, not to coach people or facilitate some relationships. But unfortunately, this is something that might happen, especially in B2B corporate organizations, where, for instance, UX design is a new thing. And based on my experience, this tip, this trick really helped me a lot of time, made an impact. Not always particularly on users, but on an organization, for instance. So first of all, it's worth mentioning that we should basically go out from our silo. So hop on a boat, basically go to your product manager, talk, collaborate, all of this stuff, because you want to survive. Secondly, it's all about managing up, but I would also say the cross, because we work with product manager. Maybe we work in product trios, right? There's a product manager, a developer, and you as a designer. If you work on the same project, then, somehow you need to collaborate because, as I told you already, we are all hired to solve problems. And that also might be tricky. Sometimes the ownership is not so clear. And when it comes to coaching and why I believe that coaching might be helpful, first of all, because I hate sharing opinions and I hate all those discussions where we sit in organization, especially in B2B. And we are basically asking ourselves, okay, so what do you think? And you, what do you think? And what is your opinion? And everyone is just shares their opinions. And there are no action steps. We are not progressing because everyone just showing their expertise. This is something that is very natural in corporate because we are hired to be an expert, to play a certain role. And that's something that might also cause an imposter syndrome. It might cause something that we will block our, mindset and thinking processes. If we become more curious, if we become more just eager to ask questions, if we ask more prompting questions, we might lead the discussion in a better direction and we might actually solve the right problems. The third tip is about the business and money. I told you that B2B is basically, we all know it, it's about money. We are not hired to create beautiful designs. Maybe we think we are, but to be honest, based on my experience, maybe it's not 20 years, but last 5 years. Yeah, I think it's kind of true that we basically can play various roles. And if we are really eager and if we really want to have a successful career, I would say, we might try this thing as well, because we design not only for users, but we do it for a business as well. So if we want to make an impact, if we want to get our product implemented, we need to act as a business designer in a sense. So worth understanding the business, worth asking questions like, okay, so what is our target audience in B2B? Are we targeting enterprise B2B clients or maybe small to medium businesses? How does our product make money? Is it a package? Do we sell packages, subscriptions, add-ons, or what is it? And how do we want to win? Do we want to differentiate based on the pricing? Let's say like agents, do we want to have very low pricing packages? Or maybe we want to, I don't know, have a very unique value proposition. These questions will help us understand the business and then will help us pick the right problems to solve. And of course, if you want to show and this design return on investment, that is very, I have never calculated this, to be honest. But it's all about numbers, right? And everyone is telling this. So if you would like to do it, then you definitely need to know the numbers and you need to know all of these things about those money on this picture. And to do it, of course, storytelling, data, so things like this can help. My fourth question might be a bit basic. It's about prioritization. And I think I saw some answers in the survey that sometimes you struggle with this as well. I struggle with this as well. Prioritization, although, can really help us, because if we are a design team of one, or maybe a design team of two, doesn't matter, if we are a small team, we need to pick the right problems to solve. We need to focus on areas where we can actually make an impact. And what's worth acknowledging, I think, based on my experience, is that we just can't solve all problems. So we don't need to do project management. We don't need to do product strategy. We don't need to teach UX, in my opinion. What is worth mentioning is that in B2B, very often there are lots of problems because probably the product was built years ago, right? This is an old tech stack and everything is just like shit. If we improve just a small thing, the small improvement can really make a difference. So focus on areas where we actually can make any. Another tip is the quote from one of my favorite books, The Culture Call. And this is something that I think we can all resonate with, no matter what the organization type is, if this is a B2B or B2C. First of all, as I told you from the beginning, and I'm repetitively saying this, we are all paid to solve problems, right? And sometimes it's really hard to divide those lines and say, okay, you solve this problem and you solve this problem, because UX is a team sport, right? So ultimately, it's worth picking right people to solve problems with. So picking the fun people, people that we enjoy to work with, right? Like Hannah and Jeff, for instance, right? Like they seem to have a good relationship. They seem to have like good, like they know what they are doing. And if you find those people, it will be easier for you to work with. No matter if your organization will be on the wave and it will be smooth and you will be sailing with your team, or if your organization will just struggle without any skipper on the boat. And my last tip for you is to ask yourself a question. Actually, what challenges do you want to solve? And when you find an answer for this question, definitely it will be easier, but definitely it's worth mentioning that B2B is very challenging. And sometimes our designs are just not getting implemented. They're just not done and our users won't see it. And we might wait and be patient. And we might use all those techniques and deal with the people and playing politics and acting as a coach to actually get our design being implemented and to actually make this impact on our users. So yeah, that's all what I have for you today. Thank you so much. If you would like to, of course, we have a Q&A session. But if at any point you would like to talk with me, just don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm always very happy to talk. Thanks
Amazing.
so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for
Yeah.
sharing this with us. We have some really wonderful questions in the chat as well.
Okay.
Cool. I'm sorry?
I will stop sharing.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Yeah. So we'll just we have some great questions. Jeff will put that Menti link in the chat again. So if you guys have other questions and want to kind of upvote them, feel free to put them in there. But yeah, it was really wonderful to kind of see your laying out like what B2B kind of is, as at least from like the designer perspective and the challenges that can kind of come with there.
Yeah.
With like, we have the salespeople, and then there's like their users or the buyers, and then we have us as the designers, and then who our users are. And it gets so complicated. There's so many
Yeah.
different varieties of there. And one of the questions, I'm just going to kind of jump in here, where somebody asked this about like when we're talking about all these kind of different stakeholders and people that we're working with. And it's actually a question I wrote on a post-it as well, but somebody wrote it in there, which is talking about this idea of managing up. And I love this idea that you said also about like of managing across in a way. And so I'm wondering if you can maybe like tell us a little bit more about that. And could you also maybe tell us about an experience that you had with it
Yeah.
and what impact that had as well?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question, first of all. So, of course, I think it all starts with, as I told you initially in my first tip, we need to understand those people that we work with, because without this, we won't be able to manage anything. Right. And of course, this managing is basically, it's not like a literal like design manager, but it's basically someone, in my opinion, who basically act a bit like a researcher, understand, let's say your boss or maybe your colleague product manager, understand their roles. So what your product manager is doing, why this person is here, basically what is this person's experience as well, because if those people do not have any experience with working with designers, that's another problem for us, right? What projects do they work on? What do they aim for from this relationship, from this project? What is their rank start? I would say, there are some habits that we all have, and that it's really easy to spot after some time working with people. So I think this is the first stage. Another stage is definitely understanding what are their needs and what do they care more about. There's some people who might care mostly about visual design. It can be your boss, it can be your colleague, it can happen. And it's totally fine. We are all different. But it's worth understanding this, because though this knowledge might help you, because if you understand this, you might use it in your presentation, in your work, in your processes, and so on. When it comes to my experience, I can maybe tell you about one of the situations from months ago when I was in a project where basically it seemed to be very ideal initially, because the company acquired a startup. Basically, we were trying to build a new kind of similar thing in a different product. So it was kind of something from scratch, but not fully. And I got really great people to work with in this project. A very passionate, with a lot of expertise. So basically, I had a subject expert person in the team, and it was super powerful because, of course, we need to learn a lot about industries. So it's another challenge. And basically, it went quite well. We did all the research, we understood the users, the potential users. We, of course, did some desk research and all of this thing. And basically, I already grasped during this like couple of months working with them that it might be a bit challenging because we acquired a startup. So those people were basically used to working in a startup, not in a corporate. So the speed of the work was different. Some of them, they didn't understand those, long decision-making process and how many people we need to involve. So they were learning a lot, and they also have never worked with designers before. So that was another challenge. And also some of those people were very much focused on features, obviously. So I organized the workshops. It was like a 2 days workshop with the whole team, with a head of product that was an expert of the industry of the topic. We have a product manager, a researcher. I have a researcher in my team, and that's a huge success. And yeah, right. And of course, me and developer. And the first day, I spent only on kind of an empathy workshop where I was trying to show them and use all the possible, most like popular methods, like, mapping journeys, like empathizing with the users. We did also user roles. Yeah, kind of personas. I wouldn't say that it was like roles. So that we picked, prioritized 2 main roles in this processes for this project. And it was, first of all, it was very knowledgeable for me because I learned a lot about the industry and the product, and the industry is basically challenging, right? And it was environmental sustainability. So I learned a lot, and they also learned a lot. And what happened after the workshop? Basically, after the workshop, they all were also doing another feature connected with this environmental topic that I wasn't involved in fully. And the product manager after this workshop, this guy basically were using the insights from the workshop to make the decision on this feature for this, because this was at the same user group. So that's how I made an impact on this person. And and probably this person even, thought maybe is not aware of this, but I am, because I saw it. I saw it when we learned about this, and this person later on made more informed decision. I saw how this guy basically were, saying the insights from our meetup, and they're all using our artifacts, our journey. So this is the first, I think, maybe the best example for you. I hope I answered the question.
No, it's actually very interesting because you kind of touched on a few other questions in this, the other ones, which is great. But kind of what I'm hearing is just like, is really understand, like, because you really kind of almost have 2 users when you're in this B2B role. You have the clients and the companies that you're working for, and then you have your users as well. And I think one of the things I kind of know, like one of the things I took out of what you were saying is also you almost have to put that lens of what we do as UX designers to the users, to the clients as well, and do the same kind of thing. So when you said like do research, you were talking about like do research like on the people in the company that you're working on, the company that you're working on, not just the users. It's kind of like your job is almost doubled in a way because you have 2 different ways. But you're also thinking about how do you kind of bring people in who maybe are not as informed on this idea, which the question I was going to ask you, which I think you kind of answered, which was how can a UX designer break out of this UX theater and advocate for user research and such stakeholder-centered environments? But it's sounding there's a bit of what you're talking about there with that. But I don't know if you have any other thoughts or any other like experience tips of like how do you break out of that theater and talk about like getting towards the actual users and not just in the stakeholder-centered area as well?
Yeah, definitely it's challenging, as we all know. I think I haven't had any ideal research process, or maybe I don't think I have ever done any statistically significant research. I haven't done it. It never happened to me. Maybe too. Let me know. I'm quite curious. But I think first of all, this type of initiatives, like you already said, Hannah, so some sort of involving people in the process. Because when also asking for their opinions in a sense, or maybe those, like coaching and all, asking questions, because when people feel involved, they care more about what we do as well, because they're involved. So they are like a part of this, you know what I mean? And this is what happened with my workshop as well. So basically people after this workshop, they were basically saying that we did amazing workshops and they were so insightful. We learned so much, and we basically had so many, because we did also ideation about this. So they were very energetic and positive after this. They spread this information. So I think that there's this word democratizing user research, right? And for instance, in my organization right now, where I still work, we run a product design newsletter. and we send it monthly to the whole organization, and we share basically, our projects, what we work on. We also invite people to join our research studies, although of course we separate them between them and users. And it's mostly about getting them and involving them in the process, because they later on they will of course advocate for this. So that's another thing. And of course, do research whenever we can, however we can. I can tell you that, for instance, for my Instagram initiative, I introduced the tool to the organization, and then the organization bought this tool, and we are using this right now. So you never know. You never know, to be honest, because we started using this for free. You know what I mean? So, we started using this for free internally. So there was no compliance yet, because the compliance issues can also be a thing. And we're starting doing this internally. Not everyone, even close to us, in our design team even, not everyone was super convinced to do it. It was about quantitative research, obviously, with this tool. Not everyone was convinced. The same happens to the product design newsletter, but now everyone is happy. So
Okay.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like just like kind of like it's a bit of like showing and exposing the larger team to kind of even what you do. And so I think that it's sounding like a lot of problems we hear sometimes is just in these B2B relationships and designers is like people just don't understand what's happening and what they're like what like is even capable, or what like they don't even know what to ask. Like what is it that we do? This problem you said sometimes of like, do we just make visuals? Do we just make things?
Yep.
And so and sounding and this came up a lot in a variety of your points of talk, and what you just said is that this relationship building and how essential that almost is to so many different aspects of the process, and how that can leverage you in different ways too,
Yep.
to one, go beyond the UX theater, but maybe advocate for more if you want to do like more proper user research, or do more getting tools that help you in a variety of ways, and really kind of building those relationships. And one of the questions that we have kind of talks about this as well, of like, how do you approach other colleagues to build relationships on a regular basis to collaborate
Mhm.
functionally?
Oh, yeah. That's a very good question, actually. So, well, it's challenging. You know how it is. If there are so many people and you might not like everyone, or maybe you basically might be tired, and you can't build a relationship with everyone because you will burn out or whatever. This was what happened to me because of various reasons last year. But yeah, so I think, first of all, I think it's the initial stage when we join the company is quite crucial. Although the organization during years can change tremendously. The company can grow, people can join, leave, they can acquire another organization. So it definitely building relationship, and it is an ongoing process. But I think what's worth is prioritizing those people in a tent. You can't put energy into every person, into every relationship. It's just impossible. It's just impossible. And you need to understand which people are basically crucial for your role and maybe for your project. And yeah, like product managers, some developers, and but also not everyone, right? So that definitely the first thing is about prioritizing a bit and spending more time with more relevant people in ourselves, because we are all at work, right? It's not like, you know. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is definitely to be a human, I would say, It's like, don't, I hate pretending to be an expert personally. Although very often people say, oh, you are an expert, or this person is an expert. But I don't know, I think that it's not fully true, because our industry is very dynamic, and the businesses are dynamic, and, users change, everything changes. So who is an expert? It's like very tricky to say. So when I don't think about myself as an expert, it's also easier for me to speak with people and don't feel like this imposter syndrome, and don't feel like, oh God, I can't say it, or I can't give a tip, or I can't ask a question. So that's something that helps. So that's the second tip. And yeah, the third one is definitely some sort of coffee chat, reaching out, over communicating, sometimes even organizing, embracing different types of communication, because, one person can prefer an email, another person can prefer Teams. Of course, we won't adjust to everyone in the team, but, imagine that the person who prefers an email is still, I don't know, the person is very high on this hierarchy ladder in the organization, and this person is very busy, right? So, and also we as designers, we are more adaptable, and we should be, I think, right? So something about this communication style, and yeah, just being, like a human being, talking with people about different things. Sometimes people with very different problems that we do not know about. I mean, personal problems. And this also kind of reflect and makes an impact on how we work and on how we feel at work. So, we don't need to understand maybe for those problems because these are private problems, but we need to be aware that something might happen. So I think these are the main tips that I have right now.
Yeah, and I think that the tip where you're talking about, like, understanding how people prefer communication too, is also tied to the idea of managing up or managing
Yeah.
across,
Yeah.
where it's like understanding where, like, just how people communicate, like that I think can build relationships, and even if it's with relationships with people that you have to have, if you don't want
Yeah.
to always have, but like ways to kind of improve that and think about how to make that less friction in that relationship is understanding like, do they like an email at the end of the week with a bullet points of what has happened, or do they want a slide, or do they not want like a review at the end of the week of what's happened? And all these kind of things can really help in that, like, managing up and with the communication as well. And I think it's a fair point. I'm glad you started off with that of like, you can only spread yourself so thin. Like, excuse me.
Exactly.
Yeah, we have like, there's only so much capacity we have,
Right.
and kind of prioritizing. I don't know if you do, but do you have, like, you start off with talking about prioritizing these relationships. Like, are there any frameworks or like activities or ways that you have thought about like how you prioritize what kind of relationships that are important in your process as in this role?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I don't have any particular one, but basically it's all related to getting to know people and basically the goals of a project maybe, but also like a company itself. And if you are going to work in this team for a long time, or maybe you will be jumping between teams, then you need to understand various roles and various people. So I think identifying those roles and the decision-making people, the people that you will have to go and ask for an approval, that's definitely key. And the same with users, because in B2B, basically, especially in enterprise, it can happen that some organizations, some clients will be a bit, I don't want to say it, but maybe more important, but prioritized because, for instance, they just contribute to more revenue for our company. So it's also worth knowing this because the matter of prioritizing with research as well.
Thank you again so much. This was lovely having you on today. We at the Fountain Institute, our vision here is a world that seeks designers for the way that they think and not just what they produce. Lovely having you all here today, and we'll see you next month. So thanks so much.